Carnival Cruise Line is by far one of the biggest and most loved cruise lines in America, but let's be honest, it also gets its share of negative headlines. From fights to food, Carnival seems like a punching bag for many people. So, what's sailing on Carnival really like? I'm talking about what's the truth behind some of the wilder things that you hear online. That's why I'm giving you the real deal, the good and the bad, and not holding back. I'm going to start with the wild videos you see around the internet. Whenever a fight breaks out, it goes viral instantly when it's on a cruise line. And maybe it's my imagination, but it seems like those fights tend to be on Carnival. So, what's the real story on Carnival and fights? Is sailing the cruise line the equivalent of going to an MMA bout? In total, I've taken close to 10 cruises on Carnival, spending weeks on the ships. In all of that time, the number of fights that I personally witnessed is zero. There was one time where it seemed like there may have been a disagreement and security ran toward it, but I couldn't tell what was going on, if anything. And within a minute, everything went back to normal. For a better picture, there are official cruise crime statistics reported to the FBI. In 2025, there were 22 assaults with serious bodily injury reported across all cruise lines sailing in the US. These aren't necessarily fights, but a serious fight would land in this category. Carnival led those stats with 8 instances. Royal Caribbean had 1. Norwegian reported 4, and MSC Cruises reported 4 as well. So, is there more fighting on Carnival than other lines? Could be, but the stats, and even the frequency of the stories that you do see, they seem to say that it's still pretty rare. From my personal experience, that's also the case. I think anyone that's a cruise fan has seen comments online that call Carnival Walmart of the seas. And whether or not you love Carnival or Walmart or you can't stand them, it's meant to be an insult. It's saying Carnival is lower class. So, what's the truth? Of course, I don't have the data on economic backgrounds of passengers for every cruise line. In my experience, however, if I had to guess, just being judgy, I'd say that it trends a touch lower than other lines just looking around the ship, but it's nothing crazy. In fact, if you're comparing other lines like Royal Caribbean or NCL or MSC, you're going to find tons of people that have sailed those lines as well. Hell, I'm one of them. So the crowd isn't that different, but there is some difference. That's my take at least. Now, if you own penthouses on both coasts and you work in investment banking, are you going to be sailing on Carnival? Likely not. So no, it's not going to be a wine and caviar crowd talking about the latest market moves or their portfolios. It's going to be a beer and pretzels group talking about gas prices. If we're going to talk about what Carnival is really like, then we have to talk about the atmosphere on the ship. To me, it's one of the main differences between Carnival and other cruise lines. The cruise line's famous motto is the fun ships. The thing is that not everyone has the same definition of fun, which I think causes some people to turn up their nose, while it makes others fall in love with the line. For instance, the sail away party. That is a big deal on a Carnival ship, complete with line dancing. The cruise directors are a big thing on Carnival, and you'll hear from them regularly. They are essentially mini rock stars on the ship. The people in general, they seem to be more outgoing than on other ships. Carnival is also big on things like passengers hiding ducks as a game around the vessel, people decorating their doors, and you can expect to come back to the room with a towel animal greeting you, if not surrounding the entire pool on one morning. The waiters in the dining room, they put on a dance in the middle of dinner. Some love it, others think that it's cringy. The ship decor also lends to the atmosphere on board. Some cruise lines aim to outfit their ships with luxurious and elegant decor. Carnival aims to make things nice while also being more fun. For example, instead of dark wood and shiny brass, interior spots on Carnival ships, they often look bright with lots of color. I can see how some folks might call aspects tacky or kitsch, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, but for others, it's what makes Carnival so much fun. I get it, you're feeding thousands of people multiple meals per day, it can all be gourmet. To me, I actually rank Carnival near the top of the list when it comes to dining. Here's the thing, personally, I'm not big into gourmet meals. Sure, I appreciate a good meal, but when I'm planning a trip, it is pretty far down the list of things that I care about. Spending 2 hours on a meal, that is my version of hell. And while I always try to go to a specialty restaurant at least once during a cruise, for the most part, I stick to those included options. To me, Carnival is the best when it comes to the food that is included with your cruise. The buffet in the dining room, I find them the exact same as what you find on other mass market lines. They are decent, but not necessarily spectacular. What stands out to me are the other included options. Not only are there a lot more of these choices, but the options are also pretty good. The deli, the pizza, Blue Iguana, and Guy's Burger Joint, they all actually have some flavor to them. I feel like that's different from the free options that you find on most lines. Now, I could use a few more fresh choices over the course of the cruise, but in general, it's pretty solid, and not having to spend more, that's always a plus in my book. Let's talk about Carnival ships and take a no BS look at them. And frankly, your vacation can vary widely with the ship that you sail. Take the Carnival Elation, for example. The ship, it was built in 1998. Coming in at about 70,000 gross tons, it is among Carnival's oldest and smallest ships. While it's been refurbished, it's still going to be way smaller and not offer nearly as many amenities as the newer ships. There's also the decor. The older ships, they can honestly feel pretty dated. The ships of the 90s and early 2000s, they did not play it safe with style choices, which I actually think is kind of fun because it can be way different than anything else at sea. Compare that to Carnival's newer Vista class ships or Excel class ships like Mardi Gras or Celebration or Jubilee. These are still pretty unique to cruising, but not nearly as out there with the decor. So yeah, a big difference across ships. One thing that seems pretty consistent across Carnival is the space per passenger. If you take the gross tonnage of the ships and you divide that by double occupancy, Carnival ships tend to rank pretty low on this metric. This stat isn't perfect, but it does give you an idea of the space available. In my experience, that meshes with what I see on board. The ships, they just feel more crowded than other lines to me. In fact, if I could give one improvement to Carnival, it would be to have a little bit more elbow room for everybody. One thing I've noticed in sailing Carnival is something that ties back to some of that perception that Carnival may be a little bit rowdier than other lines, and frankly, it's not a good first impression in my view. That's the fact that security is way beefed up on Carnival. It starts with the signs at the port that warn you about bringing drugs onto the ship. I cruise a lot, and Carnival is the only line where I've ever noticed these displayed. On top of that, they are the only line I've experienced where there are drug-sniffing dogs in the security area. Having to line up against the wall to be smelled in the crotch by a dog, that is not the way that I like to start my cruise. And once on the ship, at least on my last trip with Carnival, it seemed like security was much more prominent. I see security staff around every ship that I sail, but they were much more visible than normal, I thought. Let's talk about the cost on Carnival. I think the public perception is that Carnival is a cheap cruise line. My take is that you can absolutely find deals, but I think it is moving towards simply being affordable rather than cheap. First things first, if you want to sail dirt cheap, you absolutely can. Trips start at under $200 per person for some trips out of the West Coast. Be flexible with your dates, and you can also find deals from other ports and longer durations. It certainly feels like prices are moving higher, however. For instance, the cheapest cruise from Galveston in July, it starts at $864 for a classic week-long trip. MSC offers a 7-day Galveston cruise starting at $740. Royal Caribbean starts at $1,055. Again, affordable, but Carnival's not necessarily the cheapest. But on top of that, I'm seeing the cruise line push more prices for things around the ship. Carnival just bumped up the daily gratuity charge. There's also been changes to the drink package that means a higher price. Internet packages have increased in cost, and the 18% gratuity charged on alcoholic drinks, that recently bumped up to 20%. For a vacation, Carnival still offers a deal, but maybe not as dirt cheap as it used to be. I think going forward, you can't really talk about Carnival without talking about Celebration Key. It's not the cruise line's first private destination, but but it is now the crown jewel and millions are projected to visit each year. So what's it really like? Overall, I say that it's pretty good. It's large with lots of space for everyone. The two massive pools, which Carnival calls lagoons, that means it's easy to find a spot to swim and there's plenty of beach. There's a splash pad, an adults only area that's an extra fee, a couple of water slides. It really has everything you need for a day at the beach. If you are going, then you should be excited. But if I'm being straight with you, it could be better in my opinion. First, you can't help but compare it to Royal Caribbean's Coco Cay. Head to head, Coco Cay I think is the better spot at this point. It offers a lot more to do, and the island offers more vegetation and more coves, so it's easier to feel away from everyone else. I haven't seen an official announcement, but when I visited Celebration Key, there was construction going on to a seemingly new section of the destination, so at least the things to do gap, that's likely to be filled soon. The food at Celebration Key is also a little bit of a bummer in my opinion. You get a meal included with the day, but everything beyond that is extra. It's not that I need to eat a ton, but having more options than just a single meal, that would be nice. So a great day, absolutely, but not quite perfect just yet. Thank you for watching, and if you have thoughts on Carnival, whether they be good or bad, throw them in the comments below. Of course, I hope that you'll subscribe, and for more on cruising Carnival or any other cruise line, check out Cruzely.com. Until next time, happy sailing.